Well, I want to say good evening to everyone and welcome everyone to the August 30th meeting of the Education Compact. This is the meeting for the third quarter of the calendar year. There'll be one more meeting for the fourth quarter of the calendar year 2021. And remember, this is a joint meeting between the Office of the Mayor, the Richmond City Council, and the Richmond School Board. Tonight we have what I believe is a light agenda, about roughly 4 different items on the agenda, different parts of the agenda tonight, giving each other an opportunity for those who are home at the moment to get home to their families and maybe have dinner with their families as well before we get to the 7 o'clock hour. So I see a brief agenda ahead, and so we'll get right into it with the updates. So the first up in updates, an update from the Office of the Mayor, and I wanted to tackle what I believe is to be the elephant in the room in terms of George Wythe High School. I think we all want high quality facilities for all of our students, no matter where they live. And I know that there is an effort to construct a new high school for the George Wythe students. Obviously, the administration has some serious concerns when we talk about the Wythe topic. The issue of concern of ours ranges from whether it's the timeline to the capacity of the school to the staffing of whether or not the school gets open. First, when it comes to timeline, we are very, very concerned about the RFP being prepared and posted by the stated deadline. We have a question to the City Council on whether or not we need to revisit the 5-year CIP because of the new changing timeline of the construction and opening of a new George Wythe. We also have concerns about the capacity of George Wythe High School with the census already in, and also with prior reports stating that a larger school is needing in that part of Southside. We don't want to open up a school that is already over capacity on day one. And also, we have some serious concerns around staffing, whether or not RPS has the staffing today, and how do they plan on managing this process moving forward. I know there have been requests that we lend our staff to RPS, and we over at Richmond, the Richmond City Administration aren't necessarily into lending our staff, but we look forward to a future partnership when there is available staff over at RPS. Bottom line is this: we want to make sure that the taxpayer dollars that are allocated for projects like this, these sort of major facility projects of this sort, are done properly. And what we want overall is to see a school open as quickly as possible. And so I don't expect these questions to be answered tonight, but I do expect on behalf of the administration to at least seek some of the answers to some of the questions around timeline, around capacity, around the current staffing arrangements over at RPS. Not expecting these answers tonight, but we do, I think on behalf of the public, deserve some real direct answers to those questions as soon as possible. In addition, I know last week, many of you all saw the announcement that we had last week in regards to gun violence prevention, and why this is important for RPS and also for the City Council is that a number of our kids, we've lost, unfortunately, to gun violence in the city. And so we're looking at more preventive ways to ensure that more kids can live a high quality of life in their neighborhoods. No child should be afraid of getting off the bus and having to stay inside and play video games all day and not enjoy our parks or enjoy our neighborhoods as well. So last week, we were the recipients of a DCJS, a Gun Violence Intervention Program grant. And today with us is Eva Colan, the director of the Office of Children and Families on the city side, to talk a little bit about that grant and the purpose of those funds moving forward. Eva?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. We're really excited about this opportunity. As the Mayor shared, this is a state grant. This is an opportunity for us at the local level to put together a proposal that would serve our context and meet the needs of our specific students in our specific community, and receive a pretty substantial award in order to take on this initiative. So tonight I'll talk a little bit about the program details. We're really excited, although I will also add the caveat that the final details are being fleshed out currently, and we're looking forward to getting this off the ground in October, so later this fall. The proposal itself was informed by the framework that was developed by the Gun Violence Prevention Working Group that was convened by the mayor last year, in conjunction with CDC recommended prevention strategies. When we look at youth violence more broadly and firearm and gun violence more specifically, we know that there are specific factors in a child's life that make them more at risk to participate in gun violence. And there are also factors that make them less likely. They're called protective factors. So you have risk factors and protective factors. And we considered those two in developing our proposal. The real goal here is to identify students who have very high risk factors and help build those protective factors in them. And so in an effort to do that, let me move the slide. We are going to be targeting River City and MLK middle schools. And at each school, we're looking at 2 cohorts of 8 to 10 students. Each of those cohorts will have 2 adults assigned to them. These children are going to be identified as overage for their grade, so kids who are 15, 16, still in middle school, and who have either a sibling who has committed gun violence or who have witnessed firsthand gun violence. So we're looking at a very specific indicated population of young people. And what we will then do with these young folks is support them during the school day through communities and schools, which will be designing an in-school intervention for the children at each of those schools, and who will be helping do what we call kind of a warm handoff to after school and help support the after school partners by sharing more about the student's day, things that they should be aware of. And so in the after school space, they'll receive mentorship, mental and behavioral health support, academic assistance, and job skills development, in addition to a stipend for participation. Each of those, in those after school cohorts, the 2 adults will be, one will be a recreation supervisor from Parks and Recreation. Those folks will be hired from our communities, and we're looking for folks who share the backgrounds with our kids, and so that they can be true role models and really be mentors for these young folks. And then the other adult will be a mental or behavioral health professional provided by Child Savers or Challenge Discovery Project, 2 nonprofit organizations in Richmond that just have done phenomenal work over the years and have been huge partners both to the city and to schools as we try to support families and communities affected by gun violence. We're really excited about this because we think that this is, first of all, the state was willing to take a bet on a truly preventative program. A lot of times the funding goes towards programs that are intervention based, and we're really excited to be looking at young people who have not yet committed gun violence, but have those risk factors that might make them more likely to do so, and really wrap our arms around them. Important to note is that, as the mayor shared last week, no child will leave this program unless and until they themselves have chosen to do so. So we're not kicking kids out. We recognize that we're talking about young folks who've experienced a lot of trauma and who may bring that to their after school activities. And so we want to make sure that this becomes a safe place for them, that they feel supported, validated, and that they are not at risk of being put out because they are acting how they might act because they have experienced trauma. So that is the high level overview. Right now, our program partners are all working together on finalizing the specific program details, and they are going to be working on how young people will be referred to the program. So this will not be an open application. This will be targeting very specific young people who more likely than not are already working with one of these partners, whether CIS in their middle school, or Child Savers, or Challenge Discovery Project in their community, or through the school-based program providers as well. So I'll stop there, Mayor. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but we'll have a lot more coming on this topic by the end of September as we look forward to launching in October.
And Eva, I will say that it is always great to see that some of our past work, whether it's the beginning of allowing for after school access for every elementary schooler, every middle schooler, and all their other efforts on behalf of RPS and in the city in terms of parks and recreation and our work in human services, all coming together to make us a recipient for this grant. So this is good work. A lot of the partners involved have been people that we've partnered with in the past. And I look forward to the outcomes, the positive outcomes that come from this grant. I know there are a couple of questions for Eva regarding this initiative. First, we'll start with Ms. Page. Ms. Page?
Thank you, Mayor Stoney and Ms. Cohen, for this presentation. So I have a couple of questions. So you say, how will the students be identified? Is it just over age and trauma, that have experienced gun violence trauma, or will there be some other factors like truancy, behavior in the schools, grades?
At this point, we're looking specifically at young people who are most likely, based on the CDC risk factors, to be engaging in gun violence. So we're specifically looking at overage, so kids who are older and frankly are less likely to go on to high school as well because of their age. And then second, who have either witnessed gun violence firsthand and have been at a site or seen it happen, or have a sibling who is committed. If we believe that population, unfortunately, is large enough to exceed our 40 slots at first. But should we not fill those 40 slots? Those are what you just mentioned, Ms. Page, are other indicators. So those are definitely things that we look at when we look at young people who might be at risk of engaging in gun violence. Truancy is one of those, academic struggles are another. We often see those overlap with overage and
exactly.
Trauma experience. So I imagine that unfortunately, all of these things will be true with the young people who participate in this program. We're really trying to capture a very specific pocket of young folks who are at a very formative time in their lives and before, as I said last week, before the worst happens.
So I have another question. How will the data be tracked?
We're working on that now. So we're really we're trying to frankly be innovative in terms of how we're collecting data, because what we're doing for the first time is really trying to mesh a few different indicators, right? We're looking at the socio-emotional progress and behavioral health progress that's going to happen with the support of counseling every week, because whether it's called counseling formally or informally, just over dinner with their behavioral health expert in that group of 8 to 10 kids, there will be counseling and therapy happening. So we know that there are certain indicators that our mental health providers track. We also recognize that communities and schools looks at academics, they look at behavior, they look at completion. So we're really trying to look at the whole picture. But since we've never done this before, we've never really tried to do it all for specific children. We're in the middle of that process where we're working with our partners and the attorneys and figuring out, what we can track, what we're able to have access to. We're obviously going to have permission slips from parents so that they're providing permission for us to collect student data. But I just want to reinforce that we're passionate about collecting this data because we recognize that this is a big bet. We're investing a lot of money into a small number of young people with the belief that we will help prevent them from engaging in gun violence. So we want to be able to show how those protective factors build over time, how young people become more engaged in school, how they build more what we call, positive adult relationships and have more pro-social activities. All of these things we need to figure out how to measure. And so we're working on that right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing that information.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on this program. I spoke with my colleague, school board member Mariah White earlier, and asked her, she's not able to attend tonight, but she had a couple of questions about this program, and then I have some of my own. Her question was around parent involvement. How are the parents going to be involved in this program? She also had a question about our partners with Child Savers and Challenge Discovery projects, what their specific qualifications for gun violence prevention were. And then my question was, what else are we doing around gun violence prevention as a city? But this is terrific. I'm so glad this topic was on the agenda, and thank you, Ms. Cullen, for being here tonight.
Absolutely. So great questions. Parent involvement, where, I actually just had a conversation about this last week. So again, we're still, I want to just name, nothing is finalized. We're still figuring this all out, and we will have full details by October to share. But at this point, one of the conversations that we've had is actually with our community ambassadors. And so the conversation we're having is, how can we make sure that parents not only are signing permissions for their kids to engage in after school activity, but really understand what's at stake and are invested in this themselves? So we're having conversations about doing home visits, provided that we have COVID protocol in place, figuring out how we can actually engage with those parents directly once we identify the students, so that we're, not, like I said, not just collecting signatures on permission slips. So that's the first piece. Parents are certainly a part of this. We recognize that parents are invaluable to student development. Positive adult relationships include positive parental relationships. And Mayor Stoney's commitment over the past 5 years have been really on multi-generational approaches, that we center children. We recognize children thrive when families thrive, regardless of family structure, shape, or type. Whoever loves on those kids needs to be part of the equation. So we're working on making sure that we have integrity there. In terms of the qualifications for Child Saver Child Discovery Project, we picked these two partners specifically because of their role almost as what we call second responders. When RPS has young people involved in a shooting, Child Savers is called to provide counseling. When there are shootings in RRHA communities, Challenge Discovery Project is there. So we recognize that these are two partners that are called upon regularly to support our young people across Richmond. And so with that was at the front of this. We want to make sure we were identifying partners who had trust in our communities, and who had established relationships there, since once we get rolling, we really need to roll, and we want to make sure we have trust in place. And then what else are we doing about gun violence? Mayor, I'm actually going to hand this back to you if you want to provide some overview. I know that we're still, working on a variety of different projects, but in addition to this, you might have a few things you want to share.
That's right. We initiated a gun violence prevention task force some months ago. We declared gun violence a public health crisis some months back. Right now, I think we are in receipt of some of those recommendations. And one of those recommendations, I believe, was some of this youth gun violence prevention initiatives, just like this right here. But there are many more. This is focused on the whole child, but it will take a whole government approach to prevent gun violence. And so we believe, and I know you believe as well, Ms. Jordan, that we can't police our way out of this gun violence issue. It takes a whole government response. So you see right here, Parks and Recreation and Justice Services are involved, but there'll be other agencies involved in how we go about combating gun violence in our communities. There are a number of recommendations out there. We can certainly forward you some of those recommendations that come from our task force that we'll be using. Hopefully you'll be seeing in future budgets, but also hopefully we may see some dollars as well from the ARPA side to help with initiatives just like this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the response.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Next up, we have Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor Stoney. Thank you, Ms. Colon. Quick question. Ms. Jordan asked two of my questions already, but one of the questions would be, as far as, and I know you mentioned that, you all are still working things out. It's like you present and then we got a million questions, but one of my questions was, how will this program be somewhat promoted throughout the school? Because when we're thinking about the whole child and their peers and, when they're in school, how is this going to affect them if all of their friends understand that they're in a gun violence prevention program? So just thinking about that and thinking about how we will make sure that this is not something where it looks more punitive as opposed to trying to mitigate situations, but then at the same time, not kind of like segregate them and separate them from their peers as if they're doing something wrong. So I do think that that's important. I also wanted to know what will be the relationship between RPS and the city, since you are in the schools, or is this just a standalone program that will be worked out throughout the principal and the city? Because I do think that that's important. This is a huge initiative, and I don't think that it's something that should be left alone to just the schools. I think that that is something that this is, if, as the mayor mentioned, a government or, a statewide initiative, we all need to be a part of that. And then the other thing that I was asking and want to know about, similar to Mrs. White's point, the partners, I would also and like just to make note that it is important that we do, and I'm sure you guys are already thinking about that, one with the task force and all the other things, that we do have community members, the folks who are in these communities, the folks who are actually understand where all of this is happening and the actual start of the, things that happen before it gets to school. So I do think that that's important to be looking at that as well. And then I think my other question was, what would be the safety supports for students, outside of in the home, and how will we be able to make sure that they're getting also what they need, that it's just not at school, because we all know you leave one environment and go into a next, you kind of lose things in translation. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Yeah, I'll start from the top. So how we're discussing it, we're still naming it. I will call that out. Like, this is not going to be called like Gun Violence Prevention Initiative 2021. I think where we are is we're looking at programs that have historically run in Richmond. So there was one program that was called Life Stages, really looking at how we talk about this after school program. Frankly, the way it's going to feel for a young person is there are most likely already engaged with CIS in school. And we're imagining that that will be the intervention point for most of our kids. So they're already part of communities and schools, and they will be offered the opportunity to participate in a program that will offer them a significant stipend. We're still finalizing the details on budget, but like, they'll get cash every 3 months if they participate in this. And in that, we're looking at kind of mini courses that the program is working through. Again, like, please just take this as planning. None of this is final, but everything from like screen printing t-shirts for 2 weeks to an e-gaming competition, to just really looking at things that are fun and engaging and age appropriate for 15, 16-year-olds who are in middle school. And I said this at the press conference and I meant it, really don't want to go to a dance class with a bunch of 12-year-olds after school, right? Like, the program that we currently have at middle schools is not geared for older youth who attend middle school. So what we'll have through that process is, through these engaging activities, we're going to be bringing in Office of Community Wealth Building to talk about like resume prep and how you show up at a job site. And we're going to be doing rotations through different city departments as we bring more online. So really figuring out how we can turn this into something that is of its own accord, interesting and exciting for a 15 or 16-year-old to participate in, and then weave into it the stuff that we know will help them on the socio-emotional and the trauma side. So to your point, we're not walking into schools and saying like, here's our gun violence prevention group. We're going to call it something that's better than I can come up with, because I'm actually terrible at naming programs. But I just want to reassure you on that front, that this will hopefully have something that has no stigma, and it really will just be something that's fun and kids get paid to participate. With the role of RPS, we are working with the administration. So there is an individual who has been working on socio-emotional learning for a while at Richmond Public Schools, who's going to be joining our planning conversations at our next meeting. And so we did recognize that this was, administered through the municipality, but we kept RPS up to speed as we were going through the initial planning process, although this really is more of the after school space. So we didn't want to put too much burden on RPS on the planning side, but we would be remiss if we didn't include RPS at the table, since y'all spend the days with our young people. So that will be part of it as well, and possibly bring more people on based on the advice and guidance of this individual who'll be joining the planning team. Community members' role. This proposal was shaped based on feedback from a group of our community ambassadors that we convened in the spring. A conversation that I had with folks and a couple other members of city staff, where we just kind of asked, like, what do you think would help? I mean, honestly, and that was where people kept saying, you can do an after school program, but it doesn't matter if our kids, have trauma that hasn't been addressed. Like how can, and the reality is mental and behavioral health is very expensive. That's why we have a $500,000 grant. And so this is kind of a once in a lifetime, as far as I'm concerned, opportunity to prove that the investment's really worth it, that if we really pour in before the worst has happened, that we can, you know, divert kids into a different pathway. But ultimately, I just want to go back that this was grounded in the recommendations from community members, from survivors of gun violence, from our gun violence working group that had, gun violence prevention working group that has survivors as a part of it. And then to your point, your final question about supports out of school. So one of the reasons why we partner with communities in schools is because they do support families to access resources. So they support kids through a case managed approach during the school day, but they also refer families to other supports as well. And since they're going to be working closely with my office, we're going to be making sure that we're lining up other supports as we see them come out. And so we're like I said, we're still working on how we're engaging families on an ongoing basis, but part of this will be surveying families to identify emergent needs and making sure that we're navigating them to the resources that they need in order to meet that, to address those needs.
Eva, I guess it's fair to say as well that, you know, we've always had a difficult time in the middle years. We do a good job in the early years in elementary school and getting our kids into after school programs and creating access there. And also getting folks into job training, but those middle years have been the missing middle, unfortunately, for Richmond. And that hopefully this is one of many solutions that we see rolled out from the city and in partnership with these organizations as well. Next up, we have Ms. Rizzi, and then Ms. Burke, and then Ms. Page. Ms. Rizzi, Ms. Burke, Ms. Page. Ms. Rizzi.
Thank you, Mayor Stoney, and thank you, Ms. Colin, for this presentation. I got a couple of questions. I would like to know about research that was done prior to this that shows that young people who are more exposed to gun violence are actually more likely to commit it. I'd like to see like numbers that show that, or, you know, maybe after this, I'll conduct some research myself and see if that is the case. But I'm worried about like how these young people, I think it kind of goes along with what Ms. Jones asked, how they're gonna like not feel targeted by this, or like, you know, feeling like they were selected for, you know, a negative reason. And even with money, could that like do more damage to their psyches to know this? And then if you ever consider like mentoring as a protective factor, I know that that is something that has been really effective with dealing with kids who are struggling in one way or another, like a longer term mentor, like individual, rather than a program like this where they're in, you know, with multiple people who all have, you know, similar struggles. And, you know, it kind of seems limited in scope. And I was also wondering, were there any district-wide ideas that people suggested that, you know, this money could go toward?
Thank you, Ms. Rizzi. So first of all, with research, we're leaning on VCU Health's, VCU Health and VCU's research. They've been doing this research for a really long time, and they've provided these recommendations for year after year, and we've never had the resources to be able to follow up on them. So happy to refer you to the folks over there who've been leading our gun violence prevention working group and who have made these recommendations initially, and who have been conducting the research over time and have received, I think we're in year 16 of CDC funding for local work. So we can start with that if that's helpful. In terms of feeling targeted, what I shared with Ms. Jones, you know, is true here. These are young people who most likely are already engaged. We're going to be providing them with job skills and training, albeit in more engaging and appealing ways than like picking up trash or like doing community cleanups. And then providing compensation for that, since we recognize that 15, 16-year-olds might have other jobs, and frankly, they can make a lot more money doing less appropriate things after school at this point. And so we're trying to figure out how we can make sure there is incentive for them to participate in a program. And community members have been very clear that cash is the best way to do that. And so on that, and the final note with mentoring, actually, that's a key part of this. The reason why we have 2 adults and one is a supervisor hired by RPS is because we needed to figure out how we could compensate mentors. We talk about mentorship a lot, but dosage really matters. An hour a week reading with a kid or eating lunch with a kid is not mentorship. That is spending some time with a young person. And so this allows us to actually pay people for their time that they're going to be spending with our youth. So when we look at the Parks and Recreation supervisors, that's just the title that we use internally. These are folks who will be paid $15 an hour to be one of the two adults with the group of young people, and they will be selected based on their shared experiences with the young people who will be part of the cohorts.
Ms. Burke.
Yes, thank you so much and good evening. I'm very pleased to hear about this partnership. Every partner that you have listed already has relationships within our schools with many of our students. So this is a great carryover. Also, the opportunity for the students of which you have in mind to serve, it continues to put in place not only support, but trust. I really like the idea of the students getting a stipend. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
That does make a big difference. What my overall concern is, and I'm thinking about many of our students that come before us without disciplinary hearings, unfortunately, but it's true. And I know there's enough data to support this. Usually the majority of the students that come before us because of certain infractions that they've caused during the school year, they are mostly middle school students and African-American males. So I don't know to what extent you have in place. I don't want to see a program with 40 males. That's what my question is, because oftentimes as our middle school students, as we well know, that's a rough age group, a very challenging age group. Our young ladies want to be with our young males. So I just want us to be careful as we move forward and having some type of balance, because if it's going to be 40 young males, Hispanic, African-American, Asian, white, whatever, it's going to end up being, we can put all the fancy titles to it and then some, but it could end up as being as oftentimes students have underlying names and titles for groups. They're known for that. So I hope we're very careful. We may have to ask them to name their group. They may want to be as a fraternity or something else that really stands out. I have two questions. Number one, the time frame, is this going to be for the entire year, or will this continue with the same students for 2 or 3 years? A one-time shot isn't going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. It has to be a carryover. And it does make, having just finished the program with a group of young ladies, 6th graders who are now 12th graders who are moved on to the military or college. And we started with these young ladies in middle school level, which was most challenging, but we did it together with the mentoring and ongoing support. So my question is, number one, the overall time frame. Number two, once hearing, as Ms. Jones asked, once the students hear about this program, will students be able to volunteer if they so desire to be connected? And my third question is, you stated 40 students. Is that 40 per school or 20 per school? How would that be broken down? And I do hope that with the time frame piece, it is considered to move on from middle school into high school.
Yeah.
And once you come out of a program such as this, we go back to neighborhoods that continue to have challenges. The school atmosphere and environment may change. And sometimes the home environment or the neighborhood doesn't always connect. So I look forward to this program. I'm excited about this program. And I'm glad that you're taking the time to give it to us now piece by piece. But I do hope that we have the opportunity for overage students, as well as our students that come before our disciplinary hearings, as well as our students that are also struggling academically with reading. So I don't know whether you have that component in there as a fun way to tie in sports or music or whatever else what they like to do to enhance those skills as well. You can't do it all, but collectively that's a part of developing that relationship. So I thank you so much and look forward to more information.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you,
Burke.
Chairwoman Burke, and Eva. I mean, I'll just add on to the chairwoman's question, and this is likely rhetorical, but because I believe the grant dollars allow us the ability to pilot the approach. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So essentially, what we're going to creating is a pilot program that will need future funding from city resources in the future, but this $500,000 grant allows us the ability to shape an approach that fits the city of Richmond that we can pilot in the short term, correct?
Yes, Mayor. Yes, and so in terms of timeframe, the grant goes through June 2023. The way we're organizing the year is through three-month seasons. And so there will be kind of off months when we recognize that kids are either school's not in session, et cetera. So we're looking at like October, November, December will be season one, and they will receive a stipend for participation in that. We invite and expect kids to continue through, but like we said, nobody's getting kicked out. They will not have to re-enroll. There will be no barriers to re-entry. This is truly like, you're in this, you're in through the end, and we're building the relationships that way with that expectation. So we're looking at almost 2 years of funding on this, but as Mayor Stoney said, we are actively pursuing other funding sources to continue this. In terms of students being able to volunteer and overall numbers, we decided when we applied for this that we were going to go really big on a very small number of kids and really try to see what it looks like when we truly invest in what it costs to like really provide behavioral and mental health supports in addition to after school programming. Frankly, when I first pulled the numbers and put the budget together for my first draft, I was incredibly sad because I was hoping we could serve many more children. But when we look at the research and we know that like the cohort size was very intentional. 8 to 10 kids for 2 adults, like that's what the research says we need in order to build those relationships at a quality level. And so when we're looking at this, we're looking at about 20 kids per school, River City and MLK at the outset. As Mayor Stoney said, we're excited about this. We believe deeply in this. We believe we'll be able to show that this is valuable, and we'll be able to make the case for continued funding from the state, from federal funding sources, and also from local dollars. But this is a pilot, so we are looking at just 40 kids. We're also recognizing this provides us a true opportunity to be able to connect with families that need resources as well. The interesting thing about this population of young folks, because they actually probably ideally haven't yet been in front of the disciplinary committee. They have a lot of risk factors, but haven't quite crossed the line into perpetrating gun violence or violence. And really, we're looking for folks who are really at the prevention side. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to prove something that we haven't been able to do before, A, but B, these are kids who often show up to school, sit quietly in the back of the room. They're just trying to get through middle school before they can drop out. They don't want their parents to get arrested. They don't want to be truant, things like that. So we're really looking at how we can target those young people who might not pop up because they're not behaving badly in school. They're literally just quiet and not really participating, and how we can use that as an opportunity to provide supports to the families as well. And so as we're looking to hire the recreation supervisors, they're going to be partnering with other city agencies to make sure that we're able to make connections the same way our community ambassadors make connections to city services. That's how we view these roles. So it's not just going to be a couple hours after school with young people. It's really going to be kind of like an ongoing needs assessment of what the family needs. And that's why we're going so deep with so few rather than less deep with more kids.
The last question I think we have, we got 2 questions. Miss Page, I'm going to get your question real quick, but I see that Ms. Robertson had a question, and the question was whether or not this would be administered in schools. In schools as in, I guess, schools being the location, maybe? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, we're still working on the final details of that. And that's where we're going to be trying to assess what our hypothesis is that these are young people who would prefer not to spend more time at school than their school day. So we're trying to identify alternative sites, whether they be community centers, recreation centers, partner organizations. But that's just kind of, like the initial read is probably had enough school by the time school day is over. So how can we find other places for them to participate? And so this is also, just want to be clear as well, Parks and Recreation is in literal ongoing conversations with young people who are currently in their programs, and they are providing like live feedback as we iterate on the program details over the next couple months. So, this is not just us sitting on a random floor in City Hall coming up with ideas. We're getting constant feedback from our community ambassadors and from youth who are participating in teen workforce and other programs through Parks and Rec.
And I think that answers the question that Ms. Robinson had in the chat about how do we get schools, parents, and kids more involved in the planning and evaluation. Tell more about outcome and evaluation. The planning obviously was part of the engaging the community on what they want to see for the youth. And so these are some of the ideas that some of the families have come up with in some of our neighborhoods. And the evaluation process, obviously, I think it would not be a bad idea at all if we, once we actually pilot this, the way we can find out whether or not the program actually works is talking with the parents and also assessing the progress of the children academically. They're showing up to school, participating, and excelling. That's what we want.
Yes, sir. And that speaks to why we chose the partners we chose. You know, we've got CIS is collecting academic data. We're just working on the permissions for sharing. The other piece of this is that a lot of our after-school partners use a survey process where they actually survey young people and their families, beginning of the time in that after-school program and at the end. And so we're hoping to use that survey model as well as an additional input, in addition to what our behavioral health and mental health experts and CIS data is sharing with us. So we're also just looking for the qualitative, like, do you think this is a good thing? I mean, I know that sounds almost silly. It's so basic of a question, but it's something we sometimes forget to stop and ask when we're engaging with our families.
We have one more question from Ms. Page, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Ms. Page?
Okay, yes. So this question touched on what Chair Burke had mentioned. So my question is around the sustainability piece. And I think these are all great questions to assist you all with your planning, to assist us with the planning, but sustainability is key because anyone who works in the mental health field, trauma is not just something you deal with it a couple of days, month, or a year. It's something that's ongoing, you know, making sure that person or the individuals receive those wraparound supportive services. So as you all continue with your planning, and I know you say that based on the outcomes and evaluation of the program, hopefully you'll be able to receive more state, federal money, but sustainability is really critical because this work, we working with our young people. This is not something that we can pick up and put it down tomorrow, next week. This is ongoing.
Thank you, Ms. Page. And I think all three entities, governing entities, the administration, the school board, and the city council can agree that we're going to need a long-term commitment of investing in our children with these sort of extra wraparounds that this, I think, program offers. Like I said, we are in this position to receive a grant like this today because of the work that we've done to put in, I think, the sort of social infrastructure, like after school programming for elementary and middle schoolers before this. We need more, though. We need more. That's just the foundation. This is a good start right here. And again, as I stated last week, I'm grateful to the state administration for selecting us for this pilot. Thank you, Ms. Cohen, for that presentation, and we'll move on with the agenda. The next part of our agenda is the update from the Education and Human Service Committee. I know we have Ms. Lynch, who is out on maternity leave with her beautiful little girl, Charlotte. But Ms. Jordan, you're here with us today. Do you have any updates for the compact?
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I wasn't aware I was going to be given an update. I do not have one.
It's okay.
Thank you.
No worries, no worries. Mr. Cameron, on behalf of Richmond Public Schools, is there an update, or would you like to just move right on into section 3 of our discussion for today, the RPS reopening collective efforts for student and family safety?
That sounds great, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see all of you. As you can imagine, we are focused I would say 99.9% right now on our safe and healthy and productive reopening on September 8th in person, which will be the first time we are fully back in person in essentially a year and a half. So all the way back to March 20th of 2020 is the last time that we were all together. I do want to note our virtual academy actually has already started. So our 6th through 8th graders are participating in a state-run program that started on August 24th. So the year has started for them. But everybody else, our pre-K through 5th grade virtual students and all of our in-person students will start on September 8th. We have about 2,000 students enrolled in our virtual academy, which makes it one of the, if not the largest in the region. And that leaves about 90% of our students in person, or some have chosen, understandably, given the Delta variant, to homeschool for the beginning part of the school year. We have been fast at work implementing all 9 mitigation strategies from the Virginia Department of Health. Obviously, vaccination is number 1, strongly encouraging all of the members of the RPS family, students, staff, families to get vaccinated. It continues to be the number 1 way to prevent the spread of Delta and get the virus in hand and keep our schools open. It's why we have a vaccine mandate for all staff by October 1st. And so are continuing to message about that. As a reminder, we have medical and religious exemptions for staff, but do want to reiterate that everyone must be fully vaccinated or have an exemption by October 1. Number 2, correct and consistent use of masks is our second mitigation strategy. We have a 100% mask wearing policy. I'm actually at home right now. If I were at RPS, I would be wearing my mask. So indoors, outdoors, students, staff, visitors, everybody, masks, period. That is the rule. Number 3, physical distancing. We are establishing 3 feet of distancing to the extent possible between students and 6 feet of distancing between adults per CDC and VDH guidance. Number 4, testing. We are working to set up a testing program to assist with our employees who are seeking and getting exemptions, and possibly also some screening testing as well, particularly at the elementary level where we know kids cannot yet be vaccinated. 5th mitigation strategy is air quality improvements. We have invested quite a bit of money from our federal stimulus in HVAC upgrades and have installed hospital grade air scrubbers in every single classroom, every office, every common area. So you will see those when you visit our schools. 6th mitigation strategy is hand washing and hand sanitizing. We have upgraded all of our bathrooms with touchless soap dispensers, touchless paper towel dispensers, fixed all plumbing, electrical, and other issues in the bathrooms. Also placed hand sanitizer stations throughout our buildings, common areas, so that everyone has an opportunity to keep their hands clean at all times. 7th mitigation strategy is cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities. Again, we have invested quite a bit in new cleaning equipment, which will help our custodians to be more efficient and more effective in their cleaning practices. A lot of training on this new equipment. We also have protocols to ensure that our bathrooms are stocked and cleaned every 90 minutes. So quite a bit going on in terms of cleaning and maintaining the healthy surfaces in our buildings as well. 8th strategy is daily symptom checking. We are asking every family to check children's symptoms before they come to school. If they are not feeling well, fever, breathing issues, intestinal issues, to stay home. Same goes with our staff who will have to answer screening questions when they sign in through our computer system every morning. Again, it's really important that people stay home and get well and get tested if the symptoms continue and they appear to be related to COVID-19. We are sending home a home thermometer and a symptom checker magnet, so everybody can put that up somewhere in their home. So they can keep an eye on those symptoms. And then last, of course, contact tracing and quarantining as necessary. We are really doing everything we possibly can to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but we recognize that with the Delta variant, there is no such thing as a 0% risk. And we're seeing in other school divisions here in Virginia and around the country that even with all these mitigation strategies, sometimes you do have infection. And so that is why we are so serious about seating charts on buses and classrooms, making sure that we can quickly and efficiently contact trace so that we don't have to shut down whole schools, and sometimes not even whole classes, but rather just a handful of students who might have been exposed. I do want to note, if you're vaccinated and you're exposed, you don't have to quarantine the way unvaccinated folks do. And so strongly encouraging all of our students as well who are eligible for the vaccine 12 and up to get vaccinated. That can help us keep you in school and keep our schools open. So that is the rundown on our COVID mitigation strategies. That is our highest priority as we prepare to come back on September 8th. I got to speak virtually anyway to all of our teachers this morning to welcome them back to pre-service. By and large, what I'm hearing is people are, though anxious about the year, excited to be back with each other in person, excited to see their students. And so while we anticipate this being yet another very challenging year, we are also excited to begin the work of being back in person and charting a more positive and productive future for RPS.
Mr. Cameron, I stood with you in March of 2020 when the virus landed on the doorstep of Richmond. And I remember when you and the administration made the decision to close schools back then, we did not know whether or not how long it would be. And now as we approach the beginning of the 2021 academic year, it has been a very, very long time for our children. And I know you all have worked doubly hard over the course of the last roughly 18 months. And so as I've done publicly before, I'm going to commend you and your administration and the members of the school board for your efforts in this most challenging time that, sometimes you don't know which way is up because of this variant, but the previous incidents we've had with the COVID-19 virus. And so I know it has not been easy. Luckily enough, we've had a lot of investment in these ways to mitigate the virus in our facilities that we adopt here at the city of Richmond, but also I know that you're adopting as well. And hopefully it gives some peace of mind to our families, their parents, that when their child enters the school doors, they're entering a place, a haven that is safe for them moving forward. So I want to thank you for the effort. I have one question: is the operation of sports here this fall, in the spring, how are we using these mitigation efforts on the athletic fields and the athletic courts that our students will be participating?
Yes, so first and foremost, we are back with fall sports. I don't know if folks were able to catch the TJ Armstrong game or the Huguenot game on Friday, but the kids are back out playing. It is a thrill to see them. We have a number of mitigation strategies, including masks at all times, except obviously when actually competing, the separate use of equipment, cleaning protocols, a number of other things. And we are also exploring, as is the case in some jurisdictions, a vaccine mandate potentially for our student athletes who are eligible for the vaccine, which could help, particularly when we get into the winter for indoor sports such as basketball, where it's very hard to prevent very close contact. So that is an additional factor that we are looking at.
I want you to know I support vaccine mandates, as you know, and I support them particularly for if they can be done safely for those who are 16 and above, as they will be participating in activities with individuals who are not in their class or not in their school, or might be from another school or from another locality. And so taking every measure we can, we can take to ensure their safety, their health and safety will obviously go a long way. Last question I have, maybe you or maybe Eva can answer the question, that is regards to our after school programs. My assumption is that the measures that you've laid out will also be adopted by our after school partners as well, correct?
That's correct. So anybody, including contractors who come and work on our buildings, will need to follow our protocols, but certainly all of our after school and extended day providers.
Got it. Got it. Any questions for Mr. Cameras on this topic right here? Opening safely. Mr. Cameras, I guess it's T minus, I don't know how many days now until the day after Labor Day, and when you all have been working already hard for the last 18 months, but now it's a different level that you all will be entering into come September, the day after Labor Day. So
it's actually the day after Labor Day.
The day after the day after Labor, yes.
It's
observation.
Wednesday the 8th, yes.
Looking forward to it. I plan on visiting one of these schools fully masked to welcome our students back into the classroom. Any questions for Mr. Cameras on this topic? Seeing none, we'll move on to the last topic to be discussed tonight, is the discussion around the city and school vaccination efforts. I think Mr. Cameras touched on the RPS's efforts to vaccinate their employees, their workforce, and also potentially their children, the students as well. You all know early in August, we instituted a vaccine mandate for all city employees. We were the first locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia to do so. And we had our first reporting on August 18th. The results of that reporting, 85% compliance from the Richmond City workforce, 85% compliance, 67% of city employees were fully vaccinated. Roughly 75% had received at least one shot. We are providing a grace period between now and September 1 for those to actually comply with the mandate. Obviously, after September 1, there will be potential disciplinary actions, progressive disciplinary actions around for those who do not comply, those who are out of compliance. Our goal, obviously, is as we reach October 1, it's for 100% compliance from every city employee that currently is on the payroll, and for future employees that are hired by the city of Richmond as well. Mr. Cameron, do you have any numbers to share about the workforce at RPS at this moment in time?
Not yet. We're still in the initial stages, but we'll have some more information when the board convenes for their next school board meeting. So we'll update everybody at that point.
Sounds good to me. Are there any questions for Mr. Cameras or for us at the city on our vaccination efforts? I was pleased to read just recently that the Richmond City Health District, in combination with the Richmond or the Henrico Health District as well, will be focusing on areas like the East End and South Richmond, where we have low vaccination rates compared to our other neighborhoods in the city. We really need to do our best to get in general, the vaccination rate up at large. That's why you'll see some hubs, vaccination hubs in parts of the East End and South Richmond, where the large amount of the unvaccinated unfortunately reside in the city. We need to make every effort to get shots into every arm that is unvaccinated at the moment. And we know that is a key to keeping our kids in school and not seeing any closures moving forward. So I will continue to be a broken record on the topic. And I will say it until I'm blue in the face from the highest mountain, that we need each and every individual in the city of Richmond to choose vaccination, choose the vaccine, so we can find ourselves back to a place of normalcy like we were in 2019 than where we are today. Any questions on the topic of vaccination efforts by the city or by RPS? Seeing none, that is
Mr.
the
Mayor? I'm sorry, this is Ellen.
Ms. Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Appreciate the conversation and the information that have been shared. My question is in regards to the report that was the article in the newspaper this morning, which clearly indicates where the lack of vaccines have been administered in the city. I was hoping that we would get more detailed information, like a map that really showed us the census tracts that they referenced in that article. I would hope, Mr. Mayor, if it's possible, that we could get something like that, a map that really identified the census tracts, and that with that information, whether or not we could look at a strategic process in addition to all that is currently being done. And I appreciate all that is currently being done. But I'm concerned that based on the report that was in the paper today, that the children that will be coming back to school, many of those children may be coming from families that have not had the vaccine as well. And that just super escalate the challenge that we are subjected to potentially having. Mr. Mayor, I would ask if it's possible that we could talk with the health department more detailedly and see how we can drill down as closely as we can so that we can be more targeted with our resources to try to get to those parents, those households that have gotten the vaccine, and try to find out, what the impediment is, and if necessary, try to bring resources to the doorstep almost, to try to make this happen so that we'll have less of to the greatest extent we can reduce the risk for our children and for our staff of Richmond Public Schools and all of the other partners and so forth that are engaged in helping us to do the best job that we can and continue to do the best job that we are doing in educating our kids. So I would just ask if it's possible that we get that information that we can share with the council members as well as school board members, and surely with your administration and Richmond Public School administration as well. That would be really beneficial if we could do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson. And I believe the Richmond City Health District just recently released the community hubs, the weekly community hubs that will be open in parts of the city and in parts of Henrico County experiencing low vaccination rates. Tuesdays from 3 to 6 p.m. Starting on September 7th, there will be a vaccination hub at Second Baptist Church off of Broad Rock Boulevard in South Richmond. There will be Thursdays available from 1 to 4 p.m. at 400 East Carey Street, and also locations on Henrico, East Henrico on Wednesday, and also in East Henrico or West Henrico on Friday as well. Hopefully these are, what I know of these are just a few of the locations where these community hubs will be popping up on a weekly basis for our population to be vaccinated. I think we have to continue to educate the populace about the effectiveness of the vaccine, that it's free, that it's safe, and it's also approved by the FDA as well. There's decades and decades of reasons why many Black and Latino residents here in the city are simply refusing to be vaccinated. I think we have to do our best to educate. I think private employers and public employers like ours must continue to make bold efforts to create mandates, I think, for the families that we employ as well, the parents that we employ, to ensure that they get vaccinated for their safety and for the safety of their families too. So still a long ways to go. Obviously, you know, we had low vaccination rates, low case rates in the month of June and parts of July. And now to be here today, August 30th, as we enter the fall, and we are lagging behind, should be, it's a scary thing for everyone. Obviously I know that the RPS is going to make every effort possible to keep faculty, staff, and family and their students safe. I thank them for their measures, and I look forward to working with RPS and the Richmond City Health District so we can ensure that we can get as many people vaccinated as possible. With that, I don't have anything further. I don't see anything further as well. Ms. Page has a comment. Can we wrap this up with a comment, Ms. Page? You're on mute. You're on mute, Ms. Page.
I was just saying, you opened the meeting expressing your concerns and the elephant in the room. So I would like to close this meeting. I want to be on the record. I, along with many of my constituents, have major concerns about the construction of the new Georgia regarding the school capacity, the timeline, the duplication of services, and the majority of the students come from the 8th and the 9th district. As you have expressed your concern, I am very concerned as well, along with many of my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. I was only expressing what I've only heard from the community, and it's my hope that, as I stated at the top of our agenda this evening, that we can get our constituents, the public, some answers, some real answers on these questions of concern. With that, it's 7:12. It's an hour and 7 minutes over my goal of an hour. I appreciate everyone participating tonight. Everyone, do your best to stay safe and stay strong as we continue to navigate this pandemic. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.